Okay, I need you to picture something. It's February 2013. You're staying at a hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Old building, kind of creepy, but whatever. It's cheap. You're just passing through. You go to take a shower, turn on the water, and something's off. The pressure is weird. The water comes out dark, and there's this smell. You can't quite place it, but it's wrong. You complain to the front desk. Other guests are complaining too. Some people say the water tastes sweet, metallic, strange. For 19 days, this goes on. And then maintenance finally goes up to the roof to check the water tanks. And inside one of those tanks, a 1,000-gallon tank that supplies water to the entire hotel, they find the decomposing body of a 21-year-old woman. Her name was Elisa Lam. And for 19 days, guests at the Cecil Hotel had been drinking, bathing in, and brushing their teeth with water contaminated by her corpse. If that's not disturbing enough for you, there's a video. 4 minutes of elevator surveillance footage that shows Elisa's final moments before she disappeared. And this video, I'm not exaggerating, is one of the creepiest, most unexplainable pieces of footage you will ever see. She's pressing buttons. She's hiding in the corner. She's stepping in and out of the elevator. She's waving her hands around like she's talking to someone. But here's the thing. There's no one there. Or at least, no one we can see. This video went viral. Millions of views. Internet detectives went crazy trying to figure out what happened. Was she being chased? Was she on drugs? Was she having a mental breakdown? Was she possessed? And here's where it gets even weirder. The hotel where this happened, the Cecil Hotel, it has one of the darkest histories of any building in America. Serial killers lived there. People jumped from the windows. There were murders, suicides, overdoses, all within those walls. Some people say the building itself is cursed. So what really happened to Elisa Lam? Was it a tragic accident? A mental health crisis that ended in the worst possible way? Or was it something else? Something darker? Something that's been covered up? The official conclusion says one thing. The internet says another. And honestly, after diving deep into this case, I'm not sure either side has the full picture. So here's what I did. I took everything. The elevator footage, the autopsy report, the hotel's history, the witness statements, the theories, all of it. And I fed it into ChatGPT. Then I asked the AI to analyze the case from 3 different expert perspectives. A behavioral analyst, to break down that elevator video frame by frame. A forensic psychologist, to explain what was happening in Elisa's mind. And a skeptic, to tear apart the conspiracy theories and explain the technical questions everyone keeps asking. 3 perspectives, 3 different conclusions. And some of what they told me genuinely surprised me. Part 1. Who was Elisa Lam? Before we get into the hotel, the video, and all the theories, I think it's important to talk about who Elisa actually was. Because somewhere along the way, she became a mystery, a creepy video, a ghost story, and people forgot that she was a real person with a real life. So let's fix that. And hey, if you're already familiar with this case and just want to see what the AI had to say, I get it. There are timestamps in the description. Feel free to skip ahead to the analysis section. But if you're new to this story, or if you want the full picture, stick with me. Elisa Lam was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, on April 30th, 1991. Her parents were immigrants from Hong Kong. She had an older sister. By all accounts, she grew up in a loving, close-knit family. She was a student at the University of British Columbia, studying towards a degree. She was smart, curious. She loved fashion and art and literature. She had a blog on Tumblr where she posted about her life, her thoughts, her struggles, her observations about the world. And if you read that blog, which is still up by the way, you get a picture of someone who was thoughtful, introspective, and painfully honest about her own mental health. Because here's the thing about Elisa that's important to understand. She struggled with depression and bipolar disorder. She was open about this. In her blog posts, she wrote about her battles with these conditions. The highs and lows, the medication, the therapy, the days when getting out of bed felt impossible. This wasn't some deep, dark secret. It was part of her life, part of her story. And it's going to be relevant later, so I want to put it out there now. not to stigmatize her, but because you can't understand what happened without understanding this part of who she was. In January 2013, Elisa decided to take a solo trip down the West Coast. She was going to visit San Diego, Los Angeles, Santa Cruz, a whole California adventure by herself. Now some people hear solo trip and think that's weird or reckless. But honestly, it's not that unusual. Lots of people travel alone, especially young people trying to figure themselves out. Elisa had done it before. She was independent. She wanted to see the world. Her parents were supportive. She checked in with them regularly. This wasn't some impulsive runaway situation. It was a planned trip. She took a Greyhound bus down to California. She visited the San Diego Zoo. She was posting on social media, sharing her experiences. And then, on January 26, 2013, she checked into the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. And everything changed. Part 2. The Cecil Hotel. Okay, let's talk about the Cecil Hotel. Because this isn't just some random budget hotel. This building has a history. And when I say history, I mean the kind of history that makes you wonder why anyone would ever choose to stay there. The Cecil opened in 1927, right in downtown Los Angeles. It was supposed to be this elegant, upscale place. 700 rooms, beautiful architecture, the whole deal. But here's the thing. It opened just 2 years before the Great Depression hit. And the neighborhood around it? Skid Row, one of the roughest areas in LA. So instead of becoming this glamorous destination, the Cecil became something else entirely. A place for transients, for people down on their luck, for people with nowhere else to go. And over the decades, it became something darker. The death toll at this hotel is genuinely insane. I'm not exaggerating. There have been at least 16 deaths at the Cecil that we know of, suicides mostly, people jumping from the windows, people overdosing in the rooms, people just dying there, sometimes not discovered for days. In 1962, a woman named Pauline Otten jumped from the 9th floor after an argument with her husband. She landed on a pedestrian walking below, killed them both. In 1964, a woman named Goldie Osgood, they called her Pigeon Lady because she fed the birds in nearby Pershing Square, was found dead in her room. Raped, stabbed, strangled. The case was never solved. But here's where it gets really disturbing. In the 1980s, a man named Richard Ramirez lived at the Cecil Hotel. You might know him by his other name, the Night Stalker, one of the most terrifying serial killers in California history. He murdered at least 13 people during his spree in 1985. And every night, after committing these horrific crimes, he would come back to the Cecil, walk through the lobby covered in blood, go up to his room on the 14th floor, and nobody said anything. He lived there for months, and he wasn't the only one. In 1991, another serial killer stayed at the Cecil, Johann Jack Unterweger, an Austrian writer who was supposedly reformed after serving time for murder. He came to LA, stayed at the Cecil, and murdered at least 3 women during his visit. Prostitutes from the area strangled with their own bras. 2 serial killers, the same hotel, different decades. You start to understand why people call this place cursed. By the time Elisa Lam checked in, the hotel had tried to rebrand. The upper floors were marketed as a budget hostel called Stay on Main, aimed at young travelers and backpackers. Cleaner, safer, a fresh start for the building. But you can't really escape that kind of history, can you? The building was still the Cecil. The energy was still the Cecil. And the neighborhood? Still Skid Row, still rough, still dangerous after dark. So why did Elisa choose this place? Honestly, it was probably just cheap. When you're a young student traveling on a budget, you look for affordable accommodations. The Stay on Main marketed itself as a trendy hostel. Good reviews online, close to downtown attractions. Elisa probably had no idea about the hotel's dark past. She checked in on January 26th. She was originally assigned to a shared room, hostel style, multiple beds. But apparently, her roommates complained. They said she was behaving strangely, being weird. So the hotel moved her to a room by herself. We don't know exactly what strangely means in this context. Were they just uncomfortable sharing space with someone? Was Elisa having an episode? Was it a misunderstanding? The details are fuzzy. What we do know is that for the next few days, Elisa was alone in that hotel, and something was happening to her. She was seen in the hotel bookstore, talking with someone, seemed normal. She went out during the day and explored the city, bought records at a local shop, did tourist stuff, but she was also acting erratically at times. There are reports of her being hyper and talking fast, then being withdrawn, up and down. Her family noticed something too. When she called home, she seemed excited about the trip, but there were moments when she seemed off. Her parents would later say they wished they had paid more attention to the signs. And then, on January 31st, 2013, Elisa Lam vanished. She was supposed to check out that day. She didn't. She was supposed to call her parents. She didn't. She simply disappeared. And for the next 19 days, nobody knew where she was. Part 3. The Disappearance. January 31st, 2013, the day Elisa Lam was supposed to check out of the Cecil Hotel. She didn't. Her parents back in Vancouver were expecting a call. Every day of her trip, Elisa had checked in with them. A quick phone call, a text, something. She was consistent about it. Even when she was traveling solo, even when she was having fun, she always let them know she was okay. But on January 31st, nothing. No call, no text, no contact. At first, they probably thought she was just busy. Maybe her phone died. Maybe she got caught up exploring the city. These things happen when you're traveling. But then another day passed, and another. Still nothing. By February 1st, her parents were worried. By February 2nd, they were panicking. They called the hotel. The Cecil staff checked her room. Her belongings were still there. Her clothes, her toiletries, her medications. But Elisa was gone. Wait, back up. Her medications. This is important. Elisa was prescribed several medications for her bipolar disorder and depression. And those medications, they were still in her room. Which means that whatever happened to her, she hadn't been taking her prescribed medication. For someone with bipolar disorder, going off medication abruptly can have serious consequences. It can trigger manic episodes, psychotic breaks, erratic behavior that seems completely out of character. Keep that in the back of your mind. Her parents flew down from Vancouver immediately. They filed a missing persons report with the LAPD, and suddenly, everyone was looking for Elisa Lam. The police searched the hotel. They went room to room. They checked the hallways, the stairwells, the basement. They brought in dogs. They searched the roof. Nothing. They canvassed the neighborhood, showed her picture around Skid Row, asked the homeless population if anyone had seen her. They checked hospitals, morgues, shelters. Nothing. It was like she had evaporated, walked out of that hotel and ceased to exist. The LAPD was stumped. The family was desperate. Days turned into a week. A week turned into 2 weeks. And then, on February 13th, the police released a video. Elevator surveillance footage from the Cecil Hotel, time-stamped January 31st, the night Elisa disappeared. 4 minutes of footage that would change everything. The video was released to the public in hopes that someone might recognize Elisa, might have seen her that night, might have information about where she went. Instead, it broke the internet, because what that video shows is something that nobody can fully explain. Part 4. The elevator video. The footage is grainy. It's security camera quality from 2013, so not great. The camera is positioned in the upper corner of the elevator, looking down at an angle. There's no audio. The video starts with Elisa entering the elevator. She's wearing a red hoodie and shorts. She seems okay at first. She walks in, goes to the button panel, and starts pressing buttons. Multiple buttons. Like she's trying to go to several floors at once, or she can't decide which floor she wants. Then she steps back and waits. The elevator doors stay open. This is where it starts getting weird. She clearly pressed buttons. The elevator should be moving, but the doors just stay open. Like something is preventing them from closing. Elisa moves to the corner of the elevator. She's pressed against the wall, almost hiding, like she's trying to make herself invisible to someone outside. She peeks around the edge of the doorframe, looking into the hallway. Cautious, almost scared. Then she steps out of the elevator, looks both ways down the hallway, steps back in, steps out again. She's checking for something or someone. But here's the thing. We can see the hallway in the video, at least part of it, and there's nobody there. She's looking at an empty corridor. She gets back in the elevator and presses more buttons. Again, nothing happens. The doors won't close, the elevator won't move. And then her behavior shifts. She steps out of the elevator again, and now she's fully in the hallway. She starts moving her hands, not just gesturing. These are elaborate, almost theatrical movements. Her fingers are splayed out, her arms are waving, her hands are contorting into strange positions. It looks like she's talking to someone, having a full conversation with hand gestures and body language. But there's no one there. She walks out of frame. A few moments later, the elevator doors finally close. The elevator starts moving, going to various floors, the ones she pressed earlier. But Elisa is gone. That's the last confirmed sighting of her alive. 4 minutes of footage, 4 minutes that spawned 1,000 theories. What was she doing? Who was she talking to? Why wouldn't the elevator work? Why was she hiding? Why were her movements so strange? People watched this video and saw a woman being stalked by an invisible predator. They saw someone under the influence of drugs. They saw a demonic possession. They saw a glitch in the matrix. What they were probably actually seeing was something much sadder. But we'll get to that. The video went viral within hours of being released. Millions of views on YouTube. Reddit threads exploding with theories. News coverage around the world. Everyone was trying to solve the mystery of the elevator video. But they still hadn't found Elisa. That would take another 6 days. Part 5. The Discovery. February 19, 2013. 19 days after Elisa Lam disappeared. For almost 3 weeks, guests at the Cecil Hotel had been complaining about the water. Low pressure in the showers, water coming out dark, almost black at times. A strange taste. A weird smell that nobody could quite identify. The hotel staff did what hotel staff usually does. They made excuses. Old building, old pipes. We're working on it. But the complaints kept coming. More and more guests saying something was wrong with the water. Finally, a maintenance worker named Santiago Lopez was sent to the roof to check the water tanks. The Cecil had 4 large cisterns up there. Big cylindrical tanks that supplied water to the entire building. Each one held about 1,000 gallons. Lopez climbed up to the roof, walked over to the tanks, climbed a ladder to look inside one of them. And what he saw, I can't imagine being that guy. I genuinely can't. Floating in the water was the body of Elisa Lam. She was naked, face up, decomposing. She had been in that tank for 19 days, in the water that hundreds of hotel guests had been using to drink, to shower, to brush their teeth. When the police and fire department arrived, they had to cut open the tank to retrieve her body. The hatch on top was too small to pull her through, so they had to slice open the side with power tools. It took hours. The scene was horrific. Elisa's body was badly decomposed from being submerged for nearly 3 weeks. Her clothes were floating in the water beside her. The red hoodie, the shorts she was wearing in the elevator video, her watch, her room key. The coroner would later determine that the cause of death was accidental drowning. No signs of trauma, no signs of sexual assault, no drugs in her system except for the medications she had been prescribed, and even those were at lower levels than they should have been, suggesting she hadn't been taking them regularly. The manner of death was ruled accidental. But here's where people started asking questions. Because getting into that water tank? It wasn't supposed to be easy. The roof of the Cecil was accessible only through a locked door and a fire escape with an alarm. The tanks themselves were 8 feet tall with heavy lids. There were no ladders leading directly to the tanks. You'd have to climb. So how did a 21-year-old woman, alone, in the middle of the night, get past a locked door, past an alarm, climb onto an 8-foot tank, open a heavy lid, and lower herself into the water? And why would she do that? Why would anyone do that? These questions fueled the conspiracy theories that were already raging. Because by the time Elisa's body was found, the elevator video had been viewed millions of times. People were already convinced something sinister had happened, and the discovery of her body in a rooftop water tank only added to the mystery. Was she murdered and dumped there? Did someone at the hotel do this? Was it a cover-up? Was it something supernatural? The internet had questions. A lot of questions. And the official story wasn't satisfying anybody. Part 6. The Theories. After the elevator video went viral and Elisa's body was found, the internet went into overdrive. Everyone had a theory. Some of them were reasonable. Some of them were absolutely unhinged. Let's go through the main ones. Theory 1. Murder. This is the most common theory among people who refuse to accept the official conclusion. The idea is simple. Someone killed Elisa Lam and dumped her body in the water tank. The suspects? Take your pick. Some people point to hotel employees, someone with access to the roof, knowledge of the building, ability to move around without raising suspicion. The Cecil had a sketchy staff situation, and the building was a revolving door of transients and long-term residents with questionable backgrounds. Others point to a fellow guest, maybe someone she met at the hotel, maybe someone who followed her, maybe someone who was stalking her and she knew it, which would explain why she was hiding in the elevator, looking around corners, acting paranoid. The murder theory gained traction because of the logistics. How does a young woman get onto a locked roof, climb an 8-foot tank, open a heavy lid, and drown herself? It seems complicated. It seems like something that would require help or force. But here's the problem with the murder theory. There's no evidence. No signs of struggle on Elisa's body, no trauma, no defensive wounds, no DNA from anyone else, nothing under her fingernails. The autopsy found nothing to suggest she was attacked, restrained, or killed by another person. Could a murderer be that clean? That careful? Maybe, but it would require an incredibly sophisticated killer who left zero trace evidence. At the Cecil Hotel in 2013, it's possible, but it's a stretch. Theory 2. The morbid connection. This one got a lot of attention and ruined an innocent person's life. So, let's talk about it. Shortly after the video was released, internet detectives discovered that a Mexican metal musician named Pablo Vergara, who performed under the stage name Morbid, had stayed at the Cecil Hotel around the same time as Elisa. His music was dark. His imagery was disturbing. He had a video online where he appeared to be lying in a grave. The internet decided he was the killer. People found his social media accounts and flooded them with accusations, death threats, harassment. His videos were analyzed for hidden confessions. People claimed his lyrics contained references to Elisa's murder. They tried to connect every piece of his art to the case. There was just one problem. He had an alibi. He had checked out of the Cecil before Elisa even checked in. He was in a completely different city when she disappeared. There was literally no connection between them other than the fact that they both stayed at the same hotel at different times. But the damage was done. Morbid's reputation was destroyed. He received so much harassment that he attempted suicide. He had to go into hiding. This case became a cautionary tale about internet detective work, about how easy it is to destroy someone's life based on coincidences and assumptions, about how the crowd can become a mob. Theory 3. The supernatural. Okay, here's where things get weird. The Cecil Hotel's dark history, the suicides, the murders, the serial killers, led some people to conclude that the building itself was evil, haunted, cursed, and Elisa Lam was just another victim of whatever malevolent force resided there. The elevator video added fuel to this theory. Her strange hand movements, she was communicating with spirits, or being controlled by a demon, or fighting off a supernatural entity that we couldn't see. The fact that the elevator doors wouldn't close, a ghost was blocking them. The buttons she pressed, some kind of occult pattern. Then people discovered something that seemed impossible to explain, a tuberculosis test called Lam Elisa. Yes, really. There's a medical test for tuberculosis that's called Lam Elisa. And at the time of Elisa Lam's death, there was a tuberculosis outbreak in the Skid Row area near the Cecil Hotel. Elisa Lam, Lam Elisa, tuberculosis, the Cecil Hotel, Skid Row. People lost their minds over this coincidence. It was too perfect. It had to mean something. Some people theorized that Elisa was part of a government experiment. Others thought she was a biological weapon. Others thought her death was some kind of ritual sacrifice connected to the outbreak. The reality? It's a coincidence. The Lam Elisa test is named after lipoarabinomannan, a molecule found in tuberculosis bacteria. It has nothing to do with Elisa Lam, absolutely nothing. But when you're deep in conspiracy theory territory, coincidences become evidence. There was also a connection to the movie Dark Water, a 2005 horror film about a woman who finds a body in her apartment building's water tank. The parallels were eerie, too eerie, some people thought. Was someone recreating the movie? Was Elisa's death a copycat of a horror film? Again, coincidence. Creepy coincidence, sure, but just a coincidence. Theory 4. Accident/mental health episode. The theory goes like this. Elisa was experiencing a mental health crisis. She had bipolar disorder. During this episode, she went to the roof, possibly looking for somewhere to hide, possibly not thinking clearly at all. She climbed the water tank, either out of delusion or curiosity, or some logic that made sense only to her in that moment. She got in the water, maybe thinking she could swim, maybe not understanding the danger, and she drowned. The elevator video? It shows a woman in the middle of a psychotic episode, the paranoia, the hiding, the strange hand movements, the talking to no one. These are all symptoms that can occur during a severe manic episode with psychotic features. It's not a ghost. It's not a demon. It's not a murder. It's mental illness, unmedicated, manifesting in a terrifying way. This theory is the most supported by evidence, but it's also the one that people resist the most. Because it's sad. Because it doesn't have a villain. Because it means a young woman died alone, confused, in a water tank, and nobody could have saved her. Sometimes the truth isn't a mystery. Sometimes it's just a tragedy. Part 7. The official conclusion. In June 2013, 4 months after Elisa's body was discovered, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office released their official findings. Cause of death: accidental drowning. Manner of death: accident. The autopsy found no evidence of trauma, no signs of assault, no indication that anyone else was involved in her death. The toxicology report showed no recreational drugs, no alcohol, no poison. The only substances in her system were the medications she had been prescribed for her bipolar disorder, and those were at subtherapeutic levels, meaning she hadn't been taking them as directed. The coroner's report noted her history of bipolar disorder and depression. It noted that she had been exhibiting unusual behavior in the days before her disappearance, and it concluded that she likely entered the water tank herself during a mental health episode. Case closed, at least officially. But a lot of people weren't satisfied, and I understand why. The official conclusion leaves so many questions unanswered, or rather, it answers them in ways that feel incomplete. How did she get to the roof? The door was supposed to be locked. The alarm was supposed to sound, but the police investigation revealed that the door wasn't always locked. And the alarm? It didn't always work. The Cecil was a rundown building with maintenance issues and security gaps. Getting to the roof wasn't as impossible as it first seemed. How did she open the tank lid? Those lids were heavy, but they weren't locked. A young woman in a determined or manic state could absolutely lift one. It would be difficult, but not impossible. How did she climb an 8-foot tank? There was equipment on the roof, pipes, ladders nearby for maintenance purposes. Someone who was determined, or who wasn't thinking about danger, could find a way up. Why was she naked? This actually has a medical explanation. It's called paradoxical undressing, and it's a known phenomenon. When someone is drowning in cold water or experiencing severe hypothermia, they sometimes feel an intense burning sensation and start removing their clothes. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's documented. Elisa may have removed her clothes while in the water, struggling, confused. Why were her clothes floating beside her? See above. She removed them herself. The official conclusion isn't satisfying, Because it's simple, and we don't want simple. We want answers. We want villains. We want meaning. A young woman with so much life ahead of her died alone in a water tank, and the explanation is just, she was sick, she wasn't taking her medication, and she made a series of tragic decisions that led to her death. There's no conspiracy, no serial killer, no ghost, just a broken mental health system, a dangerous building, and a woman who fell through the cracks. The case of Elisa Lam became one of the most discussed mysteries of the decade. It spawned documentaries, podcasts, endless Reddit threads, and a Netflix series called Crime Scene: The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. Everyone wants to solve the mystery, but maybe there's no mystery to solve. Maybe there's just grief. Part 8. Behavioral Analyst. All right, this is where I handed everything over to ChatGPT. I gave it the full picture, the elevator footage description, the timeline, the witness statements, the autopsy report, everything we know about Elisa's behavior in the days before she disappeared, and I asked it to analyze the case from the perspective of a behavioral analyst, someone who studies human behavior patterns, body language, micro-expressions, the things people do when they're scared, when they're lying, when they're not in control of their own minds. Here's what it told me. Now, quick disclaimer, AI isn't perfect. It can make mistakes, it can miss things, and its analysis isn't gospel truth. Think of this as one perspective, not the final word. Use your own judgment. With that said, let's dive in.
Let me start with the elevator video, because that's where everyone focuses, and for good reason. That 4 minutes of footage is a behavioral goldmine, but most people are interpreting it wrong. When I watch that video, I don't see someone being chased by a ghost. I don't see someone playing a game or performing for the camera. I see a woman experiencing a severe dissociative or psychotic episode. Let me break it down. First, the button pressing. She enters the elevator and presses multiple buttons in rapid succession. This isn't strategic. This isn't, I'm going to floors 3, 5, and 14. This is scattered thinking, inability to focus on a single decision. In a manic state, the brain is flooded with impulses, and acting on all of them at once feels logical even when it isn't. Second, the hiding behavior. She presses herself into the corner of the elevator, then peeks around the doorframe into the hallway. This reads as paranoia. She believes someone or something is out there. She's checking. She's scared. But here's the key. Her body language isn't consistent with someone who actually sees a threat. When humans perceive real danger, we have specific physiological responses. Our muscles tense for fight or flight. Our eyes lock onto the threat. Elisa's movements are cautious, but not focused. She's reacting to a perceived threat, not an actual one. Third, the stepping in and out. She exits the elevator, looks around, comes back in, exits again, comes back. This repetitive, indecisive behavior is textbook for someone whose executive function is compromised. The part of the brain that makes decisions and commits to actions isn't working properly. She literally cannot decide whether to stay or go.
What about the hand movements? That's what everyone focuses on. Those strange gestures she makes in the hallway. People say it looks like she's performing a ritual or communicating with something.
I understand why people fixate on that. It's the most visually striking part of the video, but what I see is psychomotor agitation combined with response to internal stimuli. During certain psychotic states, people experience hallucinations, visual or auditory. They hear voices, they see things that aren't there, and they respond to those things. They have conversations with people who don't exist. They gesture, they react. Elisa's hand movements are consistent with someone who is perceiving and interacting with something we cannot see. This isn't supernatural. This is a well-documented symptom of psychosis. The fluidity of her movements also tells me something. She's not rigid or jerky, which you might see with certain drug intoxications. She's almost graceful in a strange way. This is more consistent with a manic or psychotic state than with being drugged.
But what about the elevator itself? The doors wouldn't close. People say that's proof something paranormal was happening, or that someone was holding the doors from outside the frame.
There's a much simpler explanation. Most elevators have a feature where if you press multiple buttons, especially the door hold button, the doors stay open for an extended period. Some older elevators also malfunction when too many buttons are pressed at once. The system gets confused. Elisa pressed a lot of buttons, randomly, frantically. She likely triggered a hold function or caused the elevator to glitch. There's nothing mysterious about it. It's just old technology reacting to erratic input.
Let's zoom out. What does her behavior in the days before tell you?
It tells me she was deteriorating. She was moved to a private room because her roommates complained. This suggests her symptoms were escalating and becoming noticeable to strangers. Whatever was happening internally was starting to manifest externally. She was described as hyper and talking fast at times, then withdrawn at others. This is classic bipolar cycling, mania and depression, sometimes switching rapidly. And critically, she wasn't taking her medication properly. The autopsy confirmed subtherapeutic levels. For someone with bipolar disorder, going off medication can trigger a severe episode within days, sometimes hours. Everything points to the same conclusion. Elisa was experiencing a psychiatric emergency alone in a city where she knew no one, in a hotel where nobody was paying attention. The elevator video isn't evidence of a crime or a haunting. It's documentation of a mental health crisis in progress. And that's not mysterious, it's tragic.
Part 9. Forensic Psychologist. Next, I asked ChatGPT to analyze the case from the perspective of a forensic psychologist, someone who specializes in the intersection of mental health and legal investigations, someone who can explain what was happening inside Elisa's mind and why it led her to that rooftop.
To understand what happened to Elisa Lam, you need to understand bipolar disorder, not the Hollywood version, not the she's a little moody version, the real thing. Bipolar disorder is a serious psychiatric condition characterized by extreme mood episodes. You have depressive episodes, crushing lows where getting out of bed feels impossible, and you have manic episodes, extreme highs where you feel invincible, where you don't need sleep, where your thoughts race faster than you can speak them. But here's what most people don't know. Severe mania can include psychotic features, hallucinations, delusions, a complete break from reality. You're not just energetic or impulsive. You're experiencing things that aren't real, and you fully believe they're happening. Elisa had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. She was prescribed multiple medications to manage these conditions, and according to the autopsy, she wasn't taking them properly. This is critical. When someone with bipolar disorder stops taking their medication, especially abruptly, it can trigger what we call a rebound episode. The symptoms don't just return to baseline. They often come back worse, more intense, more dangerous.
So you think she was in a psychotic state when she made that elevator video?
I think it's very likely. Look at the behaviors documented in that footage. Paranoid ideation. She's hiding, peeking around corners, clearly afraid of something, but her fear isn't focused. It's diffuse. She's not looking at a specific threat. She's scanning, checking, anxious about something she can't locate. This is consistent with paranoid delusions, disorganized thinking. She can't commit to a course of action. In, out, press buttons, wait, press more buttons. Her decision-making process is fragmented. Response to internal stimuli. Those hand movements. That gesturing to no one. She's interacting with something. Responding to a voice or a vision that exists only in her mind. Psychomotor agitation. The restless, almost compulsive movement. She can't stay still. Her body is expressing the chaos happening in her brain. All of these are textbook symptoms of a manic episode with psychotic features.
Her family says she seemed okay when she called them. How do you explain that?
This is something families often struggle with afterward. She seemed fine. How did we miss it? The truth is, people in early or moderate manic states can often mask their symptoms, especially in brief interactions. They might seem excited, talkative, energetic, things that could easily be attributed to being on vacation, having fun, experiencing new things. Elisa was calling her parents from a solo trip. Of course, she sounded excited. Of course, she was talking fast about everything she was seeing and doing. That could be mania, or it could just be a 21-year-old on an adventure. The signs were there, but they were easy to miss. And by the time her symptoms escalated to what we see in that elevator video, she was already isolated. No family, no friends, no one who knew her well enough to recognize that something was seriously wrong.
Why would someone in a psychotic state go to the roof and climb into a water tank? What's the logic there?
That's the thing. There isn't logic, not in the way we understand it. During a psychotic episode, people operate on an internal reality that makes sense only to them. Elisa might have believed she was being chased and needed to hide. She might have heard voices telling her to go to the roof. She might have seen the water tank as a place of safety or escape or something else entirely that we'll never understand. People in psychotic states have done far stranger things. They've walked into traffic believing they couldn't be hurt. They've jumped from buildings believing they could fly. They've hidden in bizarre places because their brain told them it was the only safe option. Elisa climbing into that water tank isn't evidence of foul play. It's evidence of how devastating untreated psychosis can be. In her mind, at that moment, getting into that tank made sense. It solved a problem. It answered a threat. We'll never know exactly what she was thinking, but we don't need to know. We just need to understand that her actions weren't rational because she wasn't in a rational state.
What about the paradoxical undressing? Her clothes were found floating beside her in the tank.
Paradoxical undressing is a well-documented phenomenon, usually associated with hypothermia. When the body gets extremely cold, blood vessels near the skin dilate in a last-ditch effort to warm the extremities. This creates a sudden sensation of intense heat. People experiencing this will tear off their clothes because they feel like they're burning up, even though they're actually freezing. The water in that tank would have been cold, not freezing, but cold enough, especially at night in February. If Elisa was in the water struggling, disoriented, possibly aspirating water, her body could have triggered this response. It could also be related to her mental state. People in severe psychotic episodes sometimes remove their clothing for reasons that make sense only to them. It's not uncommon. Either way, the nudity isn't evidence of assault. The autopsy found no signs of sexual trauma. This was either a physiological response to cold water or a symptom of her mental state. Probably both.
Is there anything about this case that doesn't fit the mental health explanation?
Not really. And I say that with no satisfaction. Every piece of evidence, her diagnosis, her medication levels, her behavior in the days before, the elevator video, the manner in which she was found, all of it is consistent with a young woman experiencing an acute psychiatric crisis that ended in accidental death. The tragedy isn't that there's a mystery here. The tragedy is that there isn't one. Elisa Lam was failed by a system that should have caught her. She was alone, she was sick, and nobody noticed until it was too late. If she had been with family, they might have seen the signs. If the hotel staff had been trained to recognize mental health crises, they might have intervened. If she had stayed on her medication, this might never have happened, but none of those things occurred, and so a 21-year-old woman ended up dead in a water tank, and the internet turned her death into a ghost story instead of what it actually was, a preventable tragedy.
Part 10. Skeptic. Finally, I asked ChatGPT to take the role of a skeptic, someone whose job is to challenge assumptions, debunk theories, and ask the uncomfortable questions that everyone else avoids. I also asked this perspective to tackle the technical questions, the locked doors, the alarms, the tank lids, because these are the details that fuel most of the conspiracy theories.
Let me be direct. This case isn't mysterious. It's been turned into a mystery by people who don't understand mental illness, don't understand how old buildings work, and desperately want there to be a villain. There isn't one. Let me explain why every major conspiracy theory falls apart under scrutiny.
Let's start with the biggest question everyone asks. How did Elisa get to the roof if the door was locked and alarmed?
This is the question that launches 1,000 Reddit threads, and the answer is painfully simple. The door wasn't always locked, and the alarm didn't always work. Plus, you could climb up to the roof using the fire escape. The Cecil Hotel was a rundown building in one of the roughest neighborhoods in Los Angeles. We're not talking about the Four Seasons here. This was a place with constant maintenance issues, security lapses, and staff who were barely keeping the lights on. Investigators found that the rooftop door was frequently left unlocked. Guests had accessed the roof before. People went up there to smoke, to hang out, to look at the view. It wasn't some impenetrable fortress. As for the alarm, it was inconsistent at best. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it was just turned off because staff got tired of false alarms. This was documented during the investigation. So when people say, but the door was locked and alarmed, they're imagining a security system that didn't exist. Elisa could have walked right up there. No conspiracy required.
Okay, but what about the water tank itself? Those tanks were 8 feet tall with heavy lids. How does a young woman climb up there and open it by herself?
Again, people are imagining something more difficult than it actually was. First, the tanks weren't isolated on a bare rooftop. There was maintenance equipment around them, pipes, blocks, a ladder nearby that workers used for inspections. Someone determined to climb up there could find a way. It would be awkward, but not impossible. Second, the lids. Yes, they were heavy, but they weren't locked. They weren't bolted down. They were hinged lids that you could lift with effort. A 21-year-old in a manic state, which often comes with increased energy and decreased perception of physical limitations, could absolutely lift one of those lids. And here's something people forget. Manic individuals often display surprising physical capability. They don't feel tired. They don't feel pain the same way. They push through barriers that would stop someone in a normal state. Elisa wouldn't have thought, this is too heavy, or this is dangerous. She would have just done it.
But why would she get in the tank? What possible reason could there be?
You're asking for rational motivation from someone who wasn't rational. I know that sounds dismissive, but it's the truth. People in psychotic states do things that make no sense to outside observers. They climb into small spaces because they think they're hiding from danger. They submerge themselves in water because they believe it will protect them or cleanse them. They follow commands from voices that don't exist. We will never know exactly why Elisa got into that tank, but we don't need to know. The question, why would she do that, assumes there was a logical reason. There probably wasn't. Her brain was misfiring. She did what her broken mind told her to do. Asking, why would she climb into a water tank, is like asking, why would a person with a broken leg try to walk? Because their body isn't working properly. Same principle, different organ.
What about the murder theories? Some people think a hotel employee did it, or she was followed by a predator.
Let's think this through. If someone murdered Elisa and dumped her body in that water tank, they would have had to follow her or lure her to the roof, kill her without leaving any marks or DNA, carry or force her up an 8-foot tank, open the lid, put her inside, close the lid, and leave zero evidence behind. And they did all this at a hotel with security cameras, other guests, and staff walking around. The autopsy found no signs of struggle, no defensive wounds, no bruising consistent with being restrained or dragged, no foreign DNA, no evidence of sexual assault, nothing. For the murder theory to work, you need a killer who is essentially superhuman in their ability to leave no trace. You need them to have killed her in a way that mimics drowning perfectly. You need them to have accessed the roof and tank without being seen. And you need them to have no connection to her whatsoever, because no suspect has ever emerged. Is it possible? Technically, anything is possible, but it's not probable. It's not supported by evidence. It's just what people want to believe because it's more interesting than mental illness.
Let's talk about the morbid situation. The internet was convinced this musician was involved.
Pablo Vergara, morbid, stayed at the Cecil Hotel. He made dark music. He had creepy imagery in his videos, and that was enough for the internet to decide he was a murderer. Never mind that he checked out before Elisa checked in. Never mind that he was in Mexico when she disappeared. Never mind that there was literally zero evidence connecting them. People saw dark musician plus creepy hotel and decided they had solved the case. The harassment he received was relentless. Death threats, people contacting his family. He attempted suicide because of it. A completely innocent person nearly died because internet strangers wanted to play detective. This case should be taught in schools as an example of how not to conduct an investigation. The mob mentality, the confirmation bias, the willingness to destroy someone's life based on vibes and coincidences.
What about the supernatural stuff? The Lam Elisa tuberculosis test, the dark water movie parallels, the cursed hotel?
I'm going to be blunt. This is all nonsense. The Lam Elisa test is named after Lipora Bainomanen. It's a scientific term that has existed since the 1990s. It has nothing to do with Elisa Lam. The fact that her name sounds similar is a coincidence. That's it. If your theory requires a secret government conspiracy to name a tuberculosis test after a future victim, your theory is insane. The dark water parallels? A horror movie featured a body in a water tank. Elisa's body was found in a water tank. Therefore, what? Someone recreated a movie? The hotel is haunted by the spirit of a Japanese horror film? Sometimes real events resemble fiction. That's not evidence of anything except that humans die in similar ways sometimes. And the cursed hotel narrative? Yes, the Cecil had a dark history. Suicides, murders, serial killers. But it also had thousands of guests over decades who stayed there and left perfectly fine. The building isn't evil. It was a cheap hotel in a bad neighborhood that attracted troubled people because of its low rates and lack of oversight. Correlation isn't causation. A building with a lot of deaths isn't cursed. It's just a building in a bad location with poor management.
So what's your final take?
My final take is that this case is sad, not mysterious. A young woman with a serious mental illness traveled alone to an unfamiliar city. She stopped taking her medication. She had a psychotic break in a hotel where nobody knew her or cared about her. She wandered onto the roof during an episode, climbed into a water tank, and drowned. Everything else, the theories, the documentaries, the endless speculation, is just noise created by people who can't accept a simple, tragic explanation. The real scandal isn't that Elisa was murdered or that the hotel is haunted. The real scandal is that our society is so bad at recognizing and treating mental illness that a 21-year-old can deteriorate to that point in public, surrounded by people, and nobody intervenes. That's not a mystery. That's an indictment.
Conclusion. So where does that leave us? I've spent a lot of time with this case. I've watched the elevator video more times than I'd like to admit. I've read the autopsy report, the police files, the Reddit threads, the blog posts. I've gone down every rabbit hole. And after all of that, after feeding everything to AI and getting 3 different expert perspectives, I keep coming back to the same conclusion. This isn't a mystery, it's a tragedy. Elisa Lam was a young woman with her whole life ahead of her. She was smart, creative, self-aware. She wrote openly about her struggles with mental health in a time when that wasn't as common or accepted as it is now. She was brave enough to travel alone, to explore new places, to push herself outside her comfort zone, and none of that saved her. Because here's the thing about mental illness. It doesn't care how smart you are. It doesn't care how self-aware you are. It doesn't care that you have loving parents or a future full of possibilities. When your brain chemistry goes wrong, when you stop taking the medication that keeps you stable, when you're alone in a city where nobody knows you, things can spiral very quickly. The elevator video isn't evidence of a haunting or a murder. It's 4 minutes of a young woman losing her grip on reality, with no one around to help her. And that's so much worse than any ghost story. I think about the people who could have intervened, the roommates who complained about her behavior. What if they had reported it differently? What if they had said, "Something is wrong with this girl," instead of just asking to be moved? The hotel staff who saw her acting erratically, What if they had been trained to recognize the signs of a mental health crisis? What if anyone had looked at Elisa and seen a person in danger instead of just a weird guest? But they didn't. And she ended up on that roof, in that tank, alone. The internet turned Elisa Lam into a mystery because mysteries are easier than reality. It's easier to blame a ghost, a serial killer, a government conspiracy, than to accept that sometimes people get sick and die, and there's no one to punish for it. It's easier to play detective than to sit with the uncomfortable truth that our society fails people with mental illness every single day. I think about her parents, flying down from Vancouver, desperate to find their daughter, learning that she had been in that water tank for 19 days, reading the comments online, the theories, the speculation, the people treating their daughter's death like a puzzle to be solved. They asked for privacy. They asked people to stop. And the internet kept going anyway. I'm not going to tell you what to believe. That's not what this video is about. Maybe you watch the elevator footage and see something I don't see. Maybe you think there are still unanswered questions. Maybe you're not satisfied with the official conclusion. That's fine. You're allowed to have doubts. That's the case of Elisa Lam. I'll see you in the next one.